conspiracy theorist is a term of endearment now. Did they not go looking? Does it actually make sense that if you were in control and you had the authority to conduct some sort of excavation to go looking in there, what's to say they haven't done that already? Why would they not want to share it, or why would they not want to go looking if there was a lost technology? When I say technology, it doesn't have to be space lasers, but something that they clearly had that goes above what we were taught in school. And it's clear the Egyptians had that. Like going back to the 1,000-ton statue, it's like they didn't roll that on cedar logs. All right, so remember Bob Lazar?
Yeah.
And he talked about what he was told, that one of the crafts was found at an archaeological site. When we look at all these like UFOs and all this stuff going around, what's to say that it wasn't ancient humans that have been here this whole time?
Yeah.
What's to say that there isn't a lost technology in there? If it was something so valuable and so powerful, and something that could upend the oil and gas industry as an example, or the most richest, most powerful people on earth would absolutely, or some of them at least, would want to stand in the way of that.
I always have to start off with my favorite topic in the whole wide world, my favorite place in the world, Egypt. I was just there in December, and I remember hearing about them saying that there was a new chamber that was detected, and I don't know if you know how they find these things, but that they haven't gone in and looked into it, and they were talking about robotics and various different things. But the fact that it was discovered 8 years ago, and they haven't researched this and looked into it, is just fascinating. And when the more and more and you get into ancient civilizations, as you're so deep in it, you realize that they just aren't like discovering and excavating and learning at the rate that you think they would, based on what information could be learned.
This is one of the most wild topics right now because there's something insane happening in the field of archaeology. So what you're talking about, this hidden chamber, which is massive. You remember the so-called Grand Gallery?
Yeah.
The sloping room that goes up to the King's Chamber?
I walked it.
Yeah.
You've been in
I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been to Egypt twice, or excuse me, 3 times. I've been in the Great Pyramid twice.
Yeah, me too.
And
big sloped. They've put in some janky stairs.
Yeah.
And then you go up to the King's Chamber.
Right. So this hidden chamber that they found it's called muon technology, that sends these cosmic rays through the rock. It can penetrate hundreds of meters of rock, which is wild. I'm like, how does it even work like that? But through science. So they have identified there's this hidden chamber above the Grand Gallery that's even larger than the Grand Gallery, but of a similar shape. So it might be a second Grand Gallery. And what's interesting is that they first discovered it in 2016. The study on it was published in 2017. But I'm like, here it is, the end of 2024. 8 years ago, they haven't gone looking for it, and there's no plan in place to go looking for it.
It's so wild.
Which is right. So I'm like, how is this even possible? I'm like, if the Great Pyramid, I would say, is the most mysterious structure in all of human history, there's all the debate on whether it was a tomb for the pharaohs, whether it was a lost technology, whether, even if people want to say, so let me just tell the camera and people listening, I don't think it was built to be a tomb for the pharaoh.
No.
I not for a second. There's something so
Has anyone ever been to Valley of the Kings, where they have all of the tombs in there, and they're exquisite, and there's everything, floor to ceiling, everything is covered in beautiful artwork and pictures and stories, and it's nothing like all the pyramids are basic. They're pyramids.
Right.
They're not, there's nothing written. There's
nothing written, and not only that, like people think like it's like a maze. Like, oh, they were hiding the pharaohs in there. It's like, no, you go in, you go down, and you go up, and you're there. It's not like this maze where it's like they're trying to hide it behind some blocks. But what's wild is that they have the technology to go looking for it. They could literally just drill a hole and send a tube camera through, just like they do in surgeries, and go looking. And I'm like, if this is the most mysterious structure in all of human history, and there's so much debate on whether it was a tomb for the pharaoh, but never even mind that, because some people listening look, it was a tomb for the pharaoh, fine. Then maybe in this hidden chamber, there's a buried pharaoh in there. Maybe there's information about our lost ancient past, about the history of the Egyptians. Maybe there's information about how the pyramid was constructed, because a lot of people don't realize, I know you do, but like the Egyptians left us with no explanation of any kind whatsoever for how they constructed the pyramid. Nothing. People are like, we know how. I'm like, no.
You know how hard it is to run uphill? now go ahead and like try and drag something that's like 10 tons up a hill, please.
Right.
With ropes. Please.
Right. Oh, and not only that, the largest stones in the Great Pyramid that are a few hundred feet up came from 500 miles away, and they weigh between 70 and 80 tons. So it's like, how did they lift those things upwards of 300 feet above the ground? Like, it is such a mind F in the most fun way possible. So I'm thinking
so insulting, I think, to humanity that they should tell us that it was rolled on logs. I think it's insulting.
You want to hear something fun?
Yeah.
So I nerded out hard on this one. Last time I was in Egypt, they were explaining that, yeah, they would have rolled them on cedar logs, and they brought the cedar over from Lebanon. And I'm like, because like palm trees, palm trees are not strong enough to roll anything on, and Egypt has a lack of trees. So like, yeah, they surely brought them in from Lebanon. The Lebanon cedar is a profound tree they have brought to Egypt. But I started nerding out on this, and maybe you've heard of the Mohs scale of hardness, which is like the measure of the hardness of stones. And that's a huge thing that's debated in Egyptology, because they're like, well, how do they use bronze chisels and hammers to carve granite? Which is a huge mystery, because bronze chisels and hammers won't do it. I've seen people test it in modern times. It doesn't work. It's not feasible. It's not how they did it. And so I'm like, is there a scale for the hardness of wood? Because I'm like, listen, the heaviest stone in Egypt that they moved is approximately 1,000 metric tons. It's the Ramesseum statue in Luxor. It was moved approximately 170 miles, and 1,000 metric tons is 2.2 million pounds.
Oh my God.
To put this into perspective, the largest stone we've moved in modern times was 340 tons. It's at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. They moved it 109 miles. It took a year of planning, cost $10 million. It took like 9 days of moving it 4 miles an hour. They had to shut down freeways. They couldn't even move it on certain roads because the weight of it would crush the asphalt.
Right.
And I'm like, so hold on a second, 340 tons to 1,000, it's 1/3 the weight. And you're telling me the Egyptians moved that? And let me also tell you this is a fun topic. They had to custom build a trailer truck around that 340 ton stone. It was 260 feet long. It had almost 200 semi-truck wheels, had 44 axles. This was a project.
Oh my God.
And I think it was the Los Angeles Times that called it the largest project since the Egyptians built the pyramids. And so I'm like, this is a big deal. And I'm like, so you're telling me there's something that weighs 3 times as heavy that they moved with primitive technology? So this brings me back to the cedar thing. They're like, well, they rolled it on cedar logs. So this is where I nerded out. I'm like, is there a scale for the hardness of wood? And it turns out
question.
And so there is a hardness for wood because people use wood flooring. And so there's certain types of wood. If you go cheap, your furniture and your high heels will like literally cause indents in it, and you'll ruin your own wood. So it's like, you have to have certain types of wood to look good in your house. Well, it turns out the Lebanon cedar is amongst the softest wood on earth. Not the softest, but it's at the very bottom of this huge scale. And I'm like, wait a second. So it's good for like, you could use it for patio furniture because it's weather resistant, from water. I'm like, oh, that's great. But I'm like, but it's soft. And you would never even use a Lebanon cedar for flooring inside of a house. It's not even an option. You're not going to find it anywhere for purchase, and for a reason. So I'm like, wait a second. You're telling me they cut the wood in a nice cylinder, and they did it thousands of times or whatever, and then they put this 1,000 metric ton statue on top of it, and we're going to pretend that thing would still be a cylinder?
So who's the Anthony Fauci of coming up with these lies
Zahi Hawass.
of ancient civilizations?
Zahi Hawass, the former Minister of Antiquities of Egypt, who was implicated in theft and helping black market exchange.
But
he wasn't convicted.
So it all adds up.
Yeah, everything's fine because he was not convicted. And he was removed from his position, but now he's still a huge influence. So he's the same guy that when this pyramid chamber was discovered, he had this really bizarre reaction, which is that he slammed it. There was all these articles about it. He said, this is nothing new. We know that there's chambers inside the pyramid. This is nothing. And I'm like, what a bizarre reaction for an Egyptologist. You think there'd be some excitement. So here we are 8 years later. Through the research they've been doing with the muon technology, they've learned that the chamber is larger than they originally thought, and it's just a mystery. And I'm like, so just to reiterate,
they should probably have a complete CAD design of what it looks like if they can see through that much stone.
Right.
And there literally should be probably very precise mapping of this.
They know exactly where it's at.
They might even be able to see if there's things in it.
Probably. What I know is that there's no plan. Not only have they not gone looking, there's no plan in place to do so. And I'm like, Danica, this makes no sense. I'm like, this makes absolutely no sense. We have the technology to do it. We could drill a 1/2 inch diameter hole, which is easy, and stick a little camera tube. This is doable, and they could do it by the end of the week. But they're not. There's no plan. And I'm like, some people will say, let me just give the devil's advocate. The Great Pyramid is a precious relic, and we don't want to damage it. And I'm like, hang on a second. They use like countless tons of TNT and dynamite to blow their way in there in the mid and latter part of the 1800s.
Right.
And I'm like, the pyramid's
Is
broken.
that what gave those passageways when you get in, the kind of rocky ones that look like shit, basically? And you're like, oh, this is... Oh, okay. And then you get into these beautiful walls that are like absolutely perfectly symmetrical, and they have like stair-stepping ceiling, like walls that go to the ceiling. Like, it's beautiful.
Right.
But when you come in, it's like, okay, and then you go through this hole, and then it's like kind of climb on through here.
Yep.
Okay.
It's because they dynamite.
That's the bullshit dynamite zone.
Literally, that's exactly how they got in. And so I'm like, do people say, well, we don't want to hurt the pyramid? I'm like, guys, we could drill a 1 inch or a ½ inch diameter hole, and then you could fill it when you're done. But the reality is that what's laying inside of that chamber is far more important. There could be answers for how it was constructed. There could be lost tooling in there. There could be a tomb. There's not, but there could be. Yeah, there could be. Yeah. There could be all kinds of stuff in there, or even just even if it's an empty room. Let's just say there's nothing in it. We could still learn something. One would see something we've never seen.
Right.
I had the idea, I'm like, hey, they could make this like a pay-per-view event or a live stream, and they could generate God knows how much.
Oh, sure. Like when they open up a mummy for the first time and they sort of, the question then becomes, why would they even scan to find that in the first place if they had no intention to excavate it, to look into it, to run a little camera in there? Mm-hmm. What could they have seen that would make them not want to go any further, do you think?
So this is where it gets even more fun, is that look, I'm a conspiracy theorist.
Okay.
Right?
They're also called just
truthers, realists,
open-minded,
I don't know, people who
thinkers,
just did a little bit of research on their own and just
ahead of the curve.
That didn't look at the mainstream explanation on something. I'm like, conspiracy theorist is a term of endearment now, I
agree.
But here's the conspiracy: is like, did they not go looking? Does it actually make sense that if you were in control, if you were in a position of authority within the Egypt Ministry of Antiquities, and it's been 8 years, and you had the authority to, in secret, conduct some sort of excavation to go looking in there, what's to say they haven't done that already? And this goes into why would they not want to share it, or why would they not want to go looking?
Right.
And I would say that the most likely explanation, I have a few explanations, but the number one most likely is that we have to remind ourselves that Egypt is an Islamic country, and I know we're going to talk about Turkey later, and that when you have religious implications, if there was something discovered that proved that it was far older, that would throw a wrench in a religious context.
Why?
Well, it'd be older, and it's like, oh, okay, what about all the story of Muhammad? It could stand to upend it, or if there was a lost technology. Let's just say, and when I say technology, it doesn't have to be space lasers, but something that they clearly had that goes above what we were taught in school. And it's clear the Egyptians had that. Like going back to the 1,000-ton statue, it's like they didn't roll that on cedar logs. And the Egyptians never claimed they did. There's no hieroglyph that shows them like rolling anything.
What if there's something literally levitating in there? Because the frequency of the room is the right frequency for levitation. What if there's just a fucking sarcophagus in there levitating?
So this is where things get even more fun.
I just thought of that, sorry.
So remember Bob Lazar?
Yeah.
And he talked about what he was told. And by the way, I believe most of his story. I'm not saying that everything's true. I don't know. What I'm saying is that he was at S4, and he's in the books, and they tried to cover it up and make it look like he wasn't, but he was there, and he knew to be out there on that Wednesday night to show his friends the UFO, whatever was going on. So he knows something. And what he said is that he was told that one of the crafts was found at an archaeological site. He didn't say, or he wasn't told what archaeological site, but the thing is that when we look at all these like UFOs and all this stuff going around, what's to say that it wasn't ancient humans that have been here this whole time?
Yeah.
And this is just wild, this is fun conversation. I'm not saying I'm convinced of this.
Fun to live in the mystery,
yeah,
Jimmy.
Yeah.
Let's live in the mystery.
Yeah. And so what's to say that there isn't a lost technology in there? And if they had gone looking, why would they share it with us? That would be one, invaluable, and they could use it with the intelligence communities or whatever. I'm like, people say, well, why wouldn't they share with us what they found in there? I'm like, actually, I could think of a few reasons why. If it was something so valuable and so powerful, in something that could upend the oil and gas industry as an example, or something like that, the richest, most powerful people on earth would absolutely, or some of them at least, would want to stand in the way of that.
What if there's an ark in there? Because supposedly there's more than one ark.
Right.
There's many arks. So what if there's an ark in there?
I think there's something in there. Whether it's Ark or lost technology, why would it be an empty? This room's huge. Like they thought
if it was empty, we'd go in.
Of course, they probably already went in there. Put it this way, if I had to bet money on this, if you
Yeah.
if you had to put a gun to my head and say, Jimmy, make a choice. Well, what's the truth? I think they went looking. Why would they? How could they not possibly go looking?
Well, dude, we know that we get into the Great Pyramid by greasing the guards and everybody. Like you give them money, that gives you get in off hours. I mean, this is what happens.
I did this.
They call it
bakshish, which is like the word for tips.
Yeah.
And
great.
these poor gentlemen that guard the pyramid all day long, it turns out they're not paid a lot of money. And so if you slip them a few dollars, especially US, which goes far over there now, all of a sudden you have the room to yourself.
Sorry, did you want to come at 4 a.m. tomorrow? Because it opens then.
Right. Do you want to? So they don't want you to lay in the stone box. And so I'm like, well, it turns out if you give them a few bucks, like
you can now lay in the box.
I did it.
Exactly.
I laid in there.
Did you tone in the box too?
Yes,
yeah.
and it vibrated.
Of course.
I have a wild story about that.
Really?
I told you this before when we bumped into each other at the AmFest.
So for those who don't know, so the Great Pyramid, there's the King's and the Queen's Chamber, and the King's Chamber is much larger. And at the back when you walk into that chamber, at the back there's a sarcophagus, or that's what we call it.
Yep.
Could just be a box that's dimensionally correct for the Ark, let's say.
Yep.
But anyway, it's quite thick all the way around, but it's empty. And there's a little crack, or there's like a break off one of the corners. But generally speaking, it's just an open container, essentially.
So the last time I was in Egypt was last September, a year ago, a month ago. And I had the pleasure of going with my buddy George St. Pierre, who's a notable mixed martial artist. A lot of people consider him the GOAT. And
Canadian guy?
Yes. Yeah. By the way, such a lovely individual. Like as real as you can imagine. Exactly, because he's always known as being the good guy. And he's just as real in person, and I love him, and he has a huge interest in ancient civilizations. So I had the pleasure of going with him, and this is the first time he was ever in the Great Pyramid. We gave the guard a few bucks, and he laid in it, and Yusuf Awiyan, who's the son of the late Akim Abdel Awiyan, that was the mentor of John Anthony West. And he's a wisdom speaker before he had passed away, and he had carried on legends that were passed on from the people, the Kemet, which was said in Egypt. They say that before the Egyptians, there was the Cometians. They don't teach this in school, but that's what they grew up knowing for the people that lived in Egypt. And keep in mind, these people...
That's what they called Egypt, Kemet.
Yes. A lot of people don't know that, though, and it's fascinating. So these people have a home literally across the street from the Sphinx. Their fifth floor patio overlooks it. It's wild. So Yusuf does the om and vibrating it, and he did it for George St. Pierre for a couple minutes. And I have the permission of him to tell this story, so I'm not like, he told me I could tell it, but it's kind of an important story. And so he laid in it, and it vibrated. And remember, you feel the whole thing vibrate. It's the stone, like it feels really weird. And this guy's been retired for, I don't know, 8 years or whatever it's been. And he comes out of the box, his eyes were wide open, and he's like, I'm coming out of retirement. This is like French-Canadian accent. And so a few hours later, we're at the hotel, we're taking a swim in the pool, and I asked him, like, hey, so I don't know, you mentioned something after you came out of the box. Do you remember what you said about wanting to come out of retirement? He's like, oh, no, Jimmy, I'm not coming out of retirement. He's like, but that's how I felt in the moment. He said, I felt so energized.
Wow.
And I'm like, I feel like this is an important story, because if the Great Pyramid was some sort of technology, some people have suggested that it was a DNA restoration thing.
Yeah.
This is, of course, all fun talk, like who knows?
Yeah.
But the fact that this guy, who a lot of people thought was the GOAT, and he's been retired, and he's committed to being retired, within literally 5 seconds of him coming out of that box with the vibration, that's the first thing he said. And I thought that was a profoundly interesting thing. Of all things to say and feel for someone like him, I don't know, I just felt there was something to it. I'm like, I don't know what to make of it, but I'm like, why was that how he felt in that exact moment that he came out of it? And I will say this, every time I've been in the pyramids, I feel good. There's a vibe in there.
And it's a little hot on top.
It is. It's muggy.
It's a little. There's not a lot of air moving in there, but it is a vibe in there.
It smells like breath and sweat. Right? It does. It's like muggy.
Especially when you get I've been in there with 30 people or 40 people, and holy shit, it gets hot in there.
It's a little obnoxious.
3 hours later, you're like.
Yeah. Every time I've been in there, as much as I like being in the pyramid, I'm eager to get out because you're sweaty and it's just.
Me too.
I feel like I'm gonna get. I'm not like a total germaphobe, but I don't like being sick. And being in there surrounded by everyone else's breath, I'm like, oh, I'm definitely gonna be sick. There's all these legends around the world about people living to be hundreds, even thousands of years old.
That's right.
That legend exists on multiple continents.
What if there's someone alive in the chamber?
Maybe we shouldn't open that cavity. Maybe
it's like Indiana Jones when he meets when he has to go through the Temple of Doom and do all the challenges to find and then pick the correct cup, the Holy Grail.
Yep.
And he had to. There was a what would he be called with the armor on it?
The Knight.
The Knight.
Yeah, the Guardian.
Knights of Templar.
Yeah, 800 years I think he had been guarding it. He's like, remember that guy? He's like that line. He's like. He chose poorly because they chose the gold, or as the lady that did
beautiful
the Nazi
gold with stones on it,
diamonds and crap, and then the other one was like the cup of a carpenter. The plainest one in there was the one, and I think there's a fun message about that. But that's my favorite Indiana Jones one. Is the Last Crusade.
Totally, me too. That's
Sean
definitely
Connery.
my favorite. But I've also heard that the Ark of the Covenant movie was from my friend Nassim Haramein. He said that one was the most accurate representation of the Ark story and the Ark situation. That the Ark was trying to be acquired by Hitler, and that is what's happening in that movie. And then it shows in the movie also the devastating power of it. If you look at it, and also I've heard other stories about it amplifies intention, so it amplifies whatever your intention is. So if you use it for selfish, greedy things, it essentially amplifies that frequency versus the truth, the truth and authenticity and positive intention. So, but anyway, the Ark of the Covenant movie was apparently is a pretty good representation of it.
Do you want to hear something wild?
Of course.
This will be one of the most provocative things we can talk about, which is Nazi archaeology. So it is a documented fact that Hitler and the Nazis had an obsession over ancient history. They went looking for the Ark of the Covenant. They went looking for the Holy Grail. They went looking for Thor's hammer, which I'm like, what? And they had allocated enormous resources to go look for ancient giants in Africa. I couldn't believe this when I read this. So it turns out a lot of people think no, he's quoting Indiana Jones. I'm like, actually, Indiana Jones is loosely based on a true story in that the Nazis went looking for ancient relics.
That's kind of what he's saying.
So here's the thing. When I was in Baalbek, Lebanon last September, there's one of the most mysterious ancient sites. I think it's one of the best examples of a lost civilization that was advanced because there's these 900-ton stones that were moved.
Huge pillars, right?
Huge pillars, but then they have these huge stone blocks that are 900 tons that were lifted and stacked 30 feet above the ground. It is unbelievable. But here's the thing. All over that site are swastikas. I went down the rabbit hole on swastikas. Let me just preface this because people blast me for this. Can I swear on this? Or should I not?
Absolutely.
Okay, so fuck the Nazis. Okay, fuck Hitler. Okay, what, right? What else do I need to say? However, I am very curious on why. There's no doubt that the Nazis were extremely intelligent. They may have gone down an evil path. Yes, they did. But I'm not talking about the evil. I'm talking about their interest in lost civilizations. And why did they adapt the swastika? A lot of people don't realize that the swastika is an ancient symbol that dates back approximately 10,000 years and is found on 5 continents around the world, including...
It's very Aztec looking now that you think. I mean,
yes.
Or what I would say...
Oh, yeah. You could find it in South America. You could find it in Europe, Africa, Asia, as well as North America. And so the swastika dates back here in the United States up between 22 to 2,500 years ago on the Hopewell Mound people in Ohio, but also the Pima Indians here in Arizona, the Navajo, and I believe the Hopi or the Yavapai up in northern Arizona, all had the swastika. And I'm like, this is such a unique symbol. And I should say that some people say, well, maybe it was the Milky Way galaxy, maybe it was the Big Dipper, but I'm like, it's not exactly what it looks like, and I'm not convinced, and I don't also think that it's something that, look, the fact that it's found on 5 continents, I find, and it's such a unique symbol, I think is extremely interesting, and I'm curious why they had such an obsession. And let me just say, I don't care about Aryan people. Like, I don't, whatever their obsession was on that, and maybe they're talking about ancient white aliens, maybe, but like, whatever that was, like, I don't care about. What I care about is the lost ancient realm as far as our true history being unknown to us. Like, we date back hundreds of thousands of years in our modern cranial cavity. They say that we're a 6,000-year-old civilization from the Sumerians. And then we have other sites, like in Turkey, like Göbekli Tepe, that we discovered that are 11,600 years old, which is 7,000 years older than Stonehenge, which is a total mystery in itself. And I'm like, a lot of people don't realize that we have no idea the true history of ancient civilizations. And I'm starting to think that maybe there's certain powers that be on this planet that have more information about it than we do. There seems to be a suppression, whether it's the void inside the Great Pyramid, which to not excavate it is inexplicable. Göbekli Tepe, which I'd love to talk about because it is the oldest, arguably the oldest and most mysterious ancient site on Earth. Like, I would say the Great Pyramid is the most mysterious relic, but we have no idea who built Göbekli Tepe.
Right.
And to people who aren't familiar, it's a site in Turkey. I recommend they Google it. It's a site comprising of some 200 pillars. Only 72 of them have been unearthed. The site was discovered, or they started excavations on it between 1994 and 1995. And only between 5 and 10% of it has been excavated since. And in just the last few years, and this is all in writing, by the way, this is all from the people that control the site, they have said that they are now pulling back from large-scale excavations and deferring it for future generations. And they say now it might be 150 years before it's fully excavated. And just to clarify, yes, this is one of the most mysterious sites on Earth. We have no idea who built it, how, or even precisely when. We just know that it was buried 11,600 years ago, approximately. And so for it to only be 5 to 10% excavated, and before we started, we were talking briefly about Noah's Ark, the Ark, and so here's something fun. So a lot of people think that Noah's Ark was discovered in Turkey on Mount Ararat. Well, Derinkuyu, the underground cities, as well as Göbekli Tepe is also in Turkey, same region. And what's interesting is that one of the
Are
first...
they both in the Cappadocia
Yes.
region? Both of them are? Derinkuyu,
the
underground town.
Is absolutely in Cappadocia. Göbekli Tepe, I think, is technically not, but it's not far away. I mean,
Really?
look, it'd take us a couple hours drive, but as far as if you're looking on a map, they're there.
Wow.
And what's interesting is that one of the first verses in Genesis, in the Bible, that talks about Noah emerging from the ark, he talks about building an altar to make sacrifices of every clean animal, or excuse me, some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird. And the Ark story is that he had, collected the animals in order for the continuity of the survival of the human species before the flood. And what's wild about Göbekli Tepe is that all of the pillars are depicting animals and birds. Some people have suggested that this could be the monument that he had constructed. Now, this, let me just say, a lot of people identify with this, but a lot of people think it's just so far-fetched. They hear Noah's Ark and they're like, of course there was no boat. Of course there was a flood that covered every mountain on Earth. And I'm like, I'm not saying that's what happened. It's a freaking, this story is many thousands of years old, so it doesn't have to be 100% true. But was there some sort of ark? And I'm like, when we're talking about these underground cities, so Derinkuyu is the biggest, but there's 200 others. And
Really?
yes, and a handful of them could support tens of thousands of people, upwards of 50,000 people.
Well, when you stop and you think about, like, one of the big threats to our planet is asteroids hitting. Another one could be your own nuclear warfare, right? What would you do if you couldn't get off planet? You go in.
You go underground.
You go in.
And this is where things get nuts, where it's like, even, I want to say it's the Hopi people, as well as in Arizona, the Native Americans, as well as the Aborigines. So, like, there's legends throughout the world about, it's in the Bible and elsewhere, where that beings came down, angels, and bred with the women and created the Nephilim. So there's that.
Which are like the hybrid demigods, essentially,
Yes.
right? They're the gods with the humans create these demigods.
Yes.
That's the Nephilim.
Yeah, well, Nephilim, yes, and they were said to be giants. But here's what's wild is that the Hopi people and the Aborigines, they say that the people came from underground, which kind of gives me goosebumps because I'm like,
I'm
what if...
very curious about inner Earth stuff.
I am too.
I'm very curious. I like run this thought experiment of like, and I've asked scientists and people that understand more about how this is possible, is that when I walk outside, I'm like, oh, I'm outside. I'm like free and clear, and I'm like, there we go.
Yep.
But I can't see that far. Like, I don't know how far is. I've never been outside. I've never looked at the planet before. Like, then I asked the question, what would it take to create an environment that felt the same, that felt like I was outside, that could give me sun? Because what's the sun?
Right.
Sort of like an energy source. It's like, how do you could you create that environment in a way that was inside of something?
Yeah. So some people think that maybe that's how the Earth was created. There's theories that there's actually a sun inside the Earth. This is pseudoscience, so like I'm not quoting some paper.
We're going a little bit more wild here.
This is fun talk.
But I've thought. I mean, yes.
And that's what some people think, is that the inner Earth, it's like the as above, so below, that there's a civilization in there and their sun is inside the Earth. And listen, when we see all this UFO stuff, like with these crafts coming out of the ocean,
just shoo, shoo.
Right? It's like, it would make sense, because it's like, well, where are they? Where are they? They're inside the Earth. Like, if you look at the mountain chains underneath the ocean, like the Atlantic Ridge, like it is actually one of the most complicated mountain chains on Earth. It's huge. And I'm like, can you imagine how many tunnels and caves and whatnot could be in there, or are in there, just like any other mountain, there's caves. So I kind of think that there's some truth to it, that there could be, it is absolutely possible that there are life forms, whether they be intelligent or not, living inside the Earth. It's like, it's possible, it's not, but like something isn't adding up. There is definitely a phenomenon happening with these crafts and these sightings. There's something going on. And yes, it's possible that everything we're seeing is straight out of the intelligence, deep state, industrial, military complex of top secrecy, but it's like, where did this technology come from? Could it have been found? When I hear Bob Lazar, who I think is mostly telling the truth, I'm not saying he's lying about anything. I'm just one of these, I'm a skeptic. Like
It's healthy. I think it's healthy to be a little skeptical. It just means that you're doing your own research.
With hearing that some of this stuff may have came from an archaeological site, and then through my studies of lost civilizations, with us having no idea how they constructed the pyramid, inexplicable achievements such as that 1,000-ton Ramesseum statue, the inexplicable achievements of Baalbek with these 900-ton stones that were moved, lifted, and stacked. They're the largest stones that were ever lifted and stacked in all of human history. And 900 tons is an obscene amount of weight. Like, a lot of people don't understand, like, well, 900 tons, what's that? It's like, this is bigger than anything we've done in modern times. I'm not saying we haven't lifted more than 900 tons, but when it comes to a stone block of that size and how compact the mass of it for its size, it is, to move and lift something like that is unbelievable. Just like I was describing with that 340-ton stone, what they had to do.
Well, look how much smaller those bricks got over time. Oh, look at this wall behind us here. Those are the size of the bricks now.
Right. It's like the youngest pyramids in Egypt are literally the crappiest, shittiest ones imaginable.
Right.
They're falling apart.
Further away from the Great Pyramid is like less and less accurate, perfect. The Great Pyramid is perfect.
The most sophisticated ones are the oldest ones from they call the Old Kingdom. And I love talking about this. A lot of people don't realize that although there's 116 something pyramids in Egypt, and the most sophisticated ones are the oldest ones. And there's thousands of years between the oldest and most sophisticated to the newest and crappiest. And what I was astonished to learn is that, going back to how we have no idea about the true history of the Egyptians, there's three kingdoms as far as what we were taught. There's the Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, and New Kingdom. And what's interesting is that they're separated by hundreds of years of missing history. I was astonished to learn this just a few years ago, that you have the Old Kingdom, which is when the most sophisticated projects had went down in Egypt. And there's approximately, it's either 126 years between the Old Kingdom and the Middle Kingdom, and I think it's like 178 estimated, or 180 something years estimated, maybe it's 186, between the Middle Kingdom and the New Kingdom. And they have no idea why there's this missing history. They're like, well, probably it had to do with a revolution, a revolt, an uprising, an overthrow of the government. And I'm like, okay, if there's 126 years estimated missing between the Great Pyramids and then whatever the new civilization, the Middle Kingdom that started over them, that means there's nobody alive. That's multiple generations. Nobody alive at the emergence of that new civilization that was aware of what happened to create the old one. Yeah. And then when you have, and I'm not the first to say this, but others have said it before me, which is that it's interesting to mention that Cleopatra, who was the last pharaoh of Egypt, is closer to us in age than she was to the Great Pyramid.
That's right.
Like, people don't understand. It's like, even with the Egyptians doing sophisticated projects like all these temples and the Temple of Hathor and places you've been to, which is like 3,000 years ago, well, there's 1,500 years before that when the Great Pyramids were alleged to have been constructed, assuming that's even the age.
Which it's probably not.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
Like, okay, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But as I've said before, if the pyramids are actually 4,500 years old, then, okay, our understanding of whatever we think the Egyptians were doing on the Giza Plateau at that time is so phenomenally different than what we imagine. They weren't wearing loincloths and doing lunges in the Egyptian sun, moving stone blocks. Like, they were doing something else.
That's right. That's right. Well, that makes me think, before we started, I asked you if you'd looked into Tartaria at all.
Yes.
And one of the things that they say about Tartaria is that Tartaria was like a huge continent, a huge, like, a land mass. It was a huge area.
Yep.
And that that during that time that there was a lot of, like, very advanced technology.
Right.
And so one of the theories on it is that it was sort of like a Men in Black situation, where it's actually not that long ago, that it was maybe only 100 years ago or so, like 100 or 200 years ago,
right.
And that essentially these properties, or these big structures, there's some different places in the world that are like these exquisite, beautiful places that are abandoned. There's nothing there, as if they just kind of didn't re-civilize some of them, and that we were basically like Men in Black.
Right.
And so when you give the timeline of like 126 years or 100, it's like sounds similar to like the Tartarius, one of the theories that it was actually existed not that long ago, and that we were just kind of wiped out mentally.
The Tartaria thing is wild. So I have admittedly not done a super deep dive on this, but here's what I've concluded, is that I was surprised to learn that there are many, many maps from hundreds of years ago that show this massive civilization called Tartaria. I'm like, I don't remember learning about Tartaria in school. I'm not saying it's never been mentioned, but I can tell you I have no recollection of it, because if it was mentioned for half a second.
Right.
I mean, I'm probably not mentioned at all. And I'm like, there's a lot, because the theory with it is that there was a mud flood, that there was something that happened that destroyed a civilization, and it was like a reset of some kind, and then you have all these buildings that are half underground. I can't say for certain one way or the other whether it was a mud flood or not. What I can say is that there was a civilization called Tartaria that was far larger than anything I had imagined. There's maps showing it, and I know nothing about it. That's interesting. So I don't know what to make of it all. But I do identify with continental crust displacement, as that could tie into a mud flood. I do think that, and although I've been... Okay, so here's a fun topic. So we did a podcast a couple years ago now. Let me tell you something that's happened since then. I went on another podcast, and I talked about the theory of pole shifts. And I talked about how there could be cataclysms related to it. And then I had Media Matters, who's funded by George Soros. They did a huge hit piece on me for talking about this on another podcast, where I simply said that maybe it caused continental crust displacement, and they went after me hard. I said in it that I even talked about climate change.
So it happens when you go on Joe Rogan, Jimmy, you know, gets a lot of attention.
It turns out that there's people watching it waiting for you to mess up or say anything controversial, and they come after you and they do articles. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, why are they coming after this dork on YouTube talking about ancient conspiracies? I'm like, this is pretty harmless stuff. I made it crystal clear
that the Men in Black showed up.
Apparently. And they've been outside my door every night now, you know.
And they have a black hat on.
If anything happens to me, it is a conspiracy.
If anything happens to me, I would never kill myself.
Yeah.
I'm going on record. I would never kill myself.
Yeah. I don't think I have any access to any information that would make them want to do me in. But at the same time, there's a saying that...
You have access to consciousness, though.
Yeah. There's a saying that you get the most flack when you're over the target. And the reality is that there's something involving pole shifts. Elon Musk talked about this. He talked about pole shifts being ice ages being a deep, deep rabbit hole. And he reiterated, this was on podcast, let me give him a shout out, the Full Send podcast. This is over 2 years ago now. But he talked about towards the end of it that ice ages are a deep, deep rabbit hole. And then he said it again, he reiterated himself, says a deep, deep rabbit hole. And I look at his interests. This guy's I consider him a genius. He wants to get off planet. He thinks that continuity of the human species is dependent on getting off planet. And he's obviously has an interest in ice ages. And the reality is that ice ages are a thing, and we don't have a full understanding of them. But when I look at how old the human species is, as far as in our modern capacity of our cranial capacity.
Modern meat suit.
Right? Over 300,000 years old, and we have like no explanation of anything older than 6,000 years old.
Wild.
And within it there's been 4 interglacial periods, arguably 5, but let's just say 4, over the last 450,000 years, which means that there's been these periods of cooling and then periods of warming, and we're in a warming right now.
You mean it's not global warming? Jimmy.
Listen.
That's wild.
Ancient cow
You mean
farts.
this planet just does its own thing?
This is very pseudo. I would like it if we turned the cameras off now. The interview is over. I refuse. Media Matters scared me.
Look.
It's climate change, I swear.
Strike that.
Shut down the gas stoves, please. Like,
Cows,
buy electric.
stop farting.
That's it.
No, I mean, look, it doesn't mean that running your car and exhaust doesn't do something, but like that's like a micro, minuscule little difference compared to what the planet does over time, over and over again, heating and cooling, and it's not as hot as it's ever been even.
Here's a fun fact I was astonished to learn from a Nobel Prize laureate so there's multiple Nobel Prize laureates that are contradicting the mainstream narrative on man-made climate change. We're talking about Nobel Prize laureates in physics. I want to listen to these people because they pointed out that isn't it an interesting fact that the Earth was warmer just 4,000 years ago? And I'm like, what? I didn't say that again? It was warmer 4,000 years ago? So the answer is ancient cow farts. So if we could simply, listen, Bill Gates cares about us. Come on, he has all the money. He's a philanthropist. Just Google him. He's a great guy.
That's right.
And so I want to listen to him. Even though he did not invent Microsoft and it was the gentleman from IBM that he bought the patent from, I don't care. I care about him creating Microsoft in the narrative that we've been told.
He's our savior.
Yeah, and so if he wants to get rid of cows, I think that we should eat fake meat. That's where I'm at now.
3D print meat.
Yeah, and I'd like to give a shout out to Big Pharma on this podcast.
Changing the world.
Get vaccinated.
Killing one more at a time. We do love trauma medicine, though. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah.
If we get in a car crash, we're happy for modern medicine, but we're just not happy with the daily stay on our program for the rest of your life medications.
Yeah, never again. Should I come out as an anti-vaxxer now? If I have kids, they're not getting vaccinated. I won't even
assume, Jimmy.
Yeah, I won't even get my dogs vaccinated anymore.
I don't do it either.
Yeah, they don't need it. Listen, if they get bit by rabies, I'll get them treated. They'll be all right. They're not going to get bit by rabies.
They're not going to get rabies.
It doesn't happen. Hold on. It can happen. Let me be careful here. But it's not going to happen to me. So I don't care. Listen, I was vaccinated as a kid. We got like half a dozen shots, and now it's up to 72. Something has changed.
Well, as RFK points out, and so many in this sphere, that it wasn't until, and actually it was Jim Carrey and Jenny McCarthy on Nightline or whatever the show was that night, and they go on and they say that literally, they've done it many times, but this was the clip that's famous. Back in 89 was when autism came around, and that's when the vaccine schedule changed, and that's kind of the birth of a lot of really different exotic diseases became much more prevalent within children. Autism didn't even exist before that.
So here's something wild, is that there's been a bunch of challenges put out there in the last couple of years for people to say, find me one case of autism in the Amish community.
Oh, that's right.
And I'm not here to tell you there's 0 cases. I don't know.
No, Bobby told this story.
What did he say?
He said they went into the Amish community. I went to a Maha event here in town.
Cool.
A month ago or whatever. It was Charlie Kirk put it on. It was Bobby. And,
right on. I'd love to connect with that guy.
Yeah, and Callie Means. Him
right
and his
on.
sister Casey Means wrote Good Energy, that book. And he said they went into the Amish community to try and find if there was any autism, and they found 3 cases. And those 3 cases were all children that were adopted after they had their vaccinations in the hospital.
RFK has come under so much heat, but his lawsuits prove that he's right. He has sued the pharmaceutical companies multiple times over and was never lost, correct? People need to look into this. Because of him, I learned that, hey, just so you know, these shots are given to kids, these were not tested. These weren't, like, and people don't even believe it when they hear it. Like, that's not possible. It's like, no, look into the details. It's the truth. I really like RFK, and I'm so happy to see him teaming up with President Trump.
I think that there's a few people that are going to move the needle the most with voters, and Bobby is one of them.
Totally. He's that independent guy. I really
Bobby,
like him.
Elon,
Yeah.
and Tucker. Those are my top three, those guys.
They're wonderful. These
Charlie
are good.
Kirk's doing a pretty good job.
Yep.
You know, I think Jordan Peterson has a pretty strong voice.
Yep.
I think those are like your five. Like,
they're the good guys, and they all come under so much heat, but I'm like, you just got to listen to them. And, you know, Tucker Carlson's a wonderful guy. I haven't met him personally, but I would love to. And
better in person.
Yeah?
Better human being in person.
Oh, wow, that's saying a lot.
Even more like connected, like curious, engaged, funny, like caring. Better even in person.
I was thrilled to hear him say, this was just a number of months ago, he was giving a speech in Las Vegas where he talked about the mysteries of the pyramids. And he said it. He said, it is a fact that we have no idea how the Egyptians built the pyramids. Sure. And I was like, in my house, like watching this on my phone, giving like applause. I'm like, yes, someone of notoriety is saying it, because I'm like, this is the truth. Like, I get pushback all the time when I meet new people and like they're inquiring about what I do. And I mentioned, well, we have no idea how the Egyptians built the pyramids. And they go, well, no, we do. And I'm like, no, we really don't. Like, it's a fact, we don't. They're, out of the hundreds of thousands of hieroglyphs all over Egypt, not a single one of them shows how they move stone, how they cut stone, how they, I mean, there is some glyphs showing how they carved some stuff into stone. But as far as cutting granite blocks, absolutely not. And there is not a single depiction on how they constructed the pyramids. Like, I got to reiterate it, like, just to let everyone know, it is a complete mystery.
I mean, they've got pine cones.
Yeah.
They've got incense, things like that, where they're holding. They've got a little suitcase, briefcase. We still don't know what's in the bag. What's in the bag? We still don't really know what's in there. I think that it's a power source. I think it's a mini ark. I think that's how they lit things up. But they show like these kinds of things, but they don't even show fire. They don't even show fire.
I forgot about that. That is actually a very interesting point. They don't show that at all.
You don't know how they lit anything.
Yeah, and the lack of soot inside the pyramids.
There's none.
None. A lot of people are surprised to learn that. Like, how did they see what they were doing in there?
You go to the temples, you go to the pyramids, anything now, and there's janky cords running along the side of it to like a light bar that shows you it's like there was none of that.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up, because you've been in the Great Pyramid King's Chamber. They got a freaking air conditioning unit in there, and they're running wires all over the place.
Oh, it's just wires going on. Yeah, it's terrible.
Well, I'm so glad they drilled holes in the pyramid so they could affix the wires to it. And I'm just so grateful they're not going to drill a hole to look into the chamber, the hidden chamber, because I just don't want to see the pyramid to get wrecked. Leave it as it is. Lost ancient mysteries don't exist. Just leave it as it is, and that's fine. That's sarcasm.
I mean, they take skulls, they take small artifacts, and they take a piece of that so they can look into it and discover what it is. And this is something the size of a cup, like why wouldn't you take this? People can't appreciate how big the Great Pyramid is until you go there.
It's insane.
It is gigantic. I think that if you're right, back to the original first topic of the Great Pyramid in the chamber that hasn't been explored, that there's a very good chance that they've already gone, and that either there's something in there that they don't feel like they want to expose, whether it's something levitating, the Knights of Templar are still in there, there's some kind of alien, who knows, somebody that's 5,000 years old, or there is a technology that would change the world.
Right. And I will say this, let's just be the devil's advocate and say there's no conspiracy in that regard. There's no lost technology. There's no Ark of the Covenant. There's no nothing. If nothing else, the lack of excavations there highlights incompetence and mismanagement in the archaeological realm from the regards of that. If they were hiding one thing and one thing only, it could be ancient artifacts that are invaluable, gold and other artifacts, because there's people like Zahi Hawass that have already been implicated in theft in the black market. The black market in Egyptian antiquities is insane. A few years ago, there was a study put out, it wasn't a study, it was an article that had gathered some information that the black market for just Egyptian mummies alone, not including all the other relics, was estimated between $2 and $6 billion a year. So if we go with 4 billion right in the middle.
They keep finding them? What do you mean $2.6 billion a year? They keep exchanging them? Are they like selling them? Or
so through.
like, do they keep finding them?
Okay, so
Because they're not in the sarcophaguses. Just breaking news. They've never found like the big stone boxes.
Yeah.
They've never found a body in one of those, right?
Correct.
Right.
And oh, here's something fun. So I just did a video on this recently. So back in March, in the Nile Delta, approximately an hour north of Cairo, there was a 62-ton quartz sarcophagus found while they were building a new hospital building. Every time they go building something in Cairo or in Egypt, they're finding stuff. And
Because it got so buried because the water used to be so much higher.
Yes.
I mean, this is like, I remember when we went to Luxor, there's like roads. There's basically like really, really long roads, and there's statues all the way along the way. There are different kinds of animals, but it's always like a line with a different head.
Right.
And so the whole street is lined, but at one point not that long ago, that was all covered. It was all...
Right.
It was all underground still because the Nile used to be so much more. There would be the flood, like it would
Right.
flood.
Yep.
Every
Seasonally.
year there would be a seasonal flood. And so there's so much that's buried.
It's wild. But here's where it gets even more wild. So this goes on to your point about how all these massive stone sarcophagus that they never found a body in them. So this is another example. They found this 62-ton sarcophagus, and there was no body in it except for there was relics. No photos of these relics were published. In one of the articles, I'm quoting medium.com, that described that there was a tablet in it that was an unknown metal. So I'll say that again. There was a tablet of unknown metal found in a stone sarcophagus.
Off-planet material.
It could be from a meteor. I don't know. Look, it was only one of the articles out of, let's say, 6 or 7 that published this finding that mentioned unknown metals. So I don't know what their source is. It could be a nothing burger. But I'm like, if nothing else, none of the photos shared any of the relics that were found, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
And all the other articles made it a point to highlight, because they're all like regurgitating what the authorities told them, which was that they took great care to move the sarcophagus and excavate it, and they were going to bring it to wherever to do restoration. But when I looked at the photos of the sarcophagus that they shared, it looks like, and I'm not exaggerating, they sledgehammered their way into it.
Yeah, I was going to say, they blow it up?
They beat the shit out of it.
Yeah.
So they obviously had an urgency to go see what was in it, which I don't blame them. I'd want to see it inside of it too. But they didn't show anything that was found in it. And I just don't understand the lack of transparency. This makes us conspiracy-minded people go wild, because I'm like, okay, well, show me this tablet of unknown metal. What is this? What are we talking about here? But back to your point, like, they didn't find a body in it. Just another example.
When we were there in December, I can't remember exactly where it was. We stayed in and around Cairo the entire time and only went to pyramids. We didn't actually visit any temples, but there was one that had sort of a big hallway of tons of these boxes, these sarcophagus boxes. And they had shown like how they'll slide, the top is moved over. Sometimes they had to blow it up to be able to see. Anyway, in all of this hallway with all of them in there, not a single one had anything in it.
None.
And so the question is like, why is there a box? Why is there a lid? And why is there nothing inside? And the question is what are we not seeing? There's something with frequency or energy or something that we're not putting together.
There's something there, and this is, the site you're mentioning is called the Serapeum, and to anyone that's not familiar,
Thank you.
I recommend they Google it. I think there's 27 boxes in total that they've found, but now they have done excavation, and apparently there's a room of another dozen or so. I can't remember the exact amount, but there's more there they haven't seen. There's like a tunnel that they dug through and found more.
And the passageway to get in is not big enough for them even, and so they've like literally been essentially made in that space.
It's wild, and people should look this up. They range from 60 tons to 100 tons, including the top, but none of them had anything in it. And the one that they blew open with dynamite to see what was it, because it was closed, and it was empty, which is so bizarre. So to anyone curious, like, well, what does the mainstream say? They say that they were being built to be tombs for bulls, like cows, and they just hadn't been sold yet and hadn't been filled with the cows. And I'm like, they're just making stuff up as they go. Although I will say, outside the entrance, there is a depiction of a bull, but it's not even sophisticated like these 100-ton granite boxes that are in there. So I'm like, it would lead some to think that came afterwards. But one of the things I remember noticing about that site, the Serapeum, is that if you look around before you go in it, do you remember how it's just dirt?
Yeah.
And it's all buried underground. So
Yeah.
I'm like, it's very bizarre.
It's almost
it looks
like that's not the entrance. Like they've
Right.
like kind of like the Great Pyramid. Like they have to kind of make one.
Right. It looks like it was covered up in a flood, but the
Yeah.
way it looks like a wave came in and brought all that earth over it. But
Yeah.
it could be thousands of years of sediment, or whatever. So they say.
Well, going back to just like as overall as far as excavation goes, Göbekli Tepe and how they're going to save that for future generations for excavation. Does that mean they're completely halting it, or does that just mean they are like stretching it out?
So let me clarify, because some people have misquoted me in the. So I created a lot of controversy when I brought this up, because there's a lot of issues going on at Göbekli Tepe. So they have not halted excavations entirely. What they have done, and it's in writing, they have in the last few years have walked back the large-scale excavations and are now focusing on conservation of the site. They will continue to excavate it, but there's no plan to unearth the additional 128 approximately pillars that are still under the earth that have been identified through ground-penetrating radar, and a full-scale excavation has been deferred for future generations with a 150-year approximate timetable. But there's other stuff involving the site that's pretty wild, which is that if you look at the aerial photos of it, there's 4 sets of tree orchards of olive trees that were planted over the site a literal decade after excavations began. And these, through ground penetrating radar, and I established this through an archaeologist that physically worked at Göbekli Tepe, and the guy doesn't like me. He ended up blocking me on Twitter because I was nice to him, but I was literally bringing up the controversies. I'm like, why are there trees planted on top of ancient ruins? And he corroborated. He said, I asked him very politely, can you clarify if any of these orchards of trees have been planted on top of ancient ruins? And the answer was yes. And so the explanation is that the farmers that owned the land prior to the Turkish ministry acquiring the land, is that they planted the olive trees in order to boost the value of the land, which doesn't make much sense to me, because I'm like, Göbekli Tepe is invaluable. It's the oldest ancient site on earth. It's worth God knows how much money. What do we? And you're going to tell me that olive trees have increased the value?
Pretty sure as art goes, this is priceless.
Money controls the world, and I can wrap my head around that dumb decisions are made by people trying to make money. Okay, fine. However, those trees were planted 24 years ago, and there's no plan to remove the trees. And those tree roots could stand to damage the ruins beneath them, because that's what roots do. And if nothing else, there's no plan to remove the trees, which I have 2 things to say on this, which not only highlights that there's no plan to fully excavate the site. Out of all species of trees you could plant on top of it, did you know that there was a law created, I believe in 1935, in Turkey, that it is called the olive tree law? It is illegal to cut olive trees down in the country of Turkey.
Well, isn't that convenient?
It's very convenient. Of course, it's a coincidence. There's no conspiracy here. But I'm like, really? Like, so they could be fined if they tear any of them down. And so when I made these videos on it, it caused a lot of controversy, and the leaders of the site responded in numerous articles. And they basically called me a conspiracy theorist. And what they said is that these olive trees' roots will grow horizontal and will not cause any damage to the ruins. But then the same gentleman, his name is Dr. Lee Carroll, who is the head of field work at Göbekli Tepe, he went on a podcast after my video to try to rebut it. And he said that they are actively monitoring the trees and the roots to ensure that they're not going to damage the ruins. And I'm like,
why would you waste your time?
Yeah, which is it? I thought you just said that these trees, it's going to be fine. And so look, best case scenario, it's wild incompetence. But then I look at, and here's a fun thing to talk about, is the Gunung Padang site in Indonesia. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, you had mentioned that, and I was like, so I looked it up. I mean, it looks like it's like stair-stepped.
Yes.
It has like a structural sort of stair-stepping, like pyramid-like sort of. But it's kind of vegetative, right? It's green. It's like shelves all the way up.
Exactly.
It looks like a huge area.
Yeah. What they did was, it's a mountain, and it's a pyramidal shape. So they carved these series of 5 terraces. So it's like a pyramid. It's like steps and steps.
Yep.
And it's absolutely man-made. Like, the mountain might be natural, well, it is, but they geoengineered it essentially into an ancient site. And what's wild about this site is that it could be somewhere between 24 to 27,000 years old. And that's based on soil dating that ground-penetrating radar has identified a subterranean tunnel and chamber beneath those ruins. And this was highlighted by Graham Hancock in his show Ancient Apocalypse in the first episode. And there's a notable geologist that examined the data of that ground-penetrating radar, and he says that there's significant traits about it that indicate that it's man-made. Now, the naysayers will say it's probably just a lava tube and that the site itself was built on a volcanic anomaly. It's volcanic in nature, and it's probably just natural. And I'm like, okay, well, the reality is that we don't know what it is. And just 10 years ago, the authorities within Indonesia, and this is in writing, they said that they were willing to allocate unlimited funding and resources to excavate the site. And then something happened a few years ago where they walked that back and stop the excavations. And as of right now, there is no plan in place to excavate whatever that mysterious anomaly is under the ground. Maybe it's natural, maybe it's man-made, but if it is man-made, this would be one of the most incredible discoveries of our time, because a site like that should not date back, based on what we were taught, 24 to 27,000 years old. And I'm like, there's this reoccurring theme, whether it's the Great Pyramid, Göbekli Tepe, and Gunung Padang, that the world's most mysterious and oldest ancient sites on Earth are not being fully excavated.
Right.
So I go down this rabbit hole and I'm like, okay, well, let me just follow the money and see who the decision makers are.
Smart.
And so a lot of people like, I didn't study archaeology, I studied business in school. And if there's anything I've learned, it's like, just go looking for, follow the money, look to see who key decision makers are.
Logical, practical pathways.
And so this gets into a wild conspiracy that ties into Göbekli Tepe and Gunung Padang, which is that, so let me walk back from Gunung Padang for a second and go back to Göbekli Tepe and share that what happened was, when they were doing the large-scale excavations, it was under different management. And then you had a company called the Doges Group, which is located...
Owned by George Soros. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's worse than that.
BlackRock. It's BlackRock, isn't it? Don't tell me it's BlackRock, seriously. State Street, Vanguard.
The World Economic Forum. So listen to this. The Doges Group is a multi-billion-dollar...
Klaus Schwab.
Klaus Schwab
ran the World Economic Forum.
So this is fun. So, because I'm going to preface it with this, because some people say, well, maybe there's a lack of funding at Göbekli Tepe. No, there's not. The Doges Group, which is a billion-dollar conglomerate made up of 250 companies, mostly entertainment. For some reason, the CEO of the Doges Group decided to essentially acquire the sole proprietorship of Göbekli Tepe. They did, back in 2016, they went to the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, Switzerland. This is real, like people can Google this. They announced this partnership at the World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos, where they were going to allocate initial funding of $15 million to set up tourism infrastructure and acquire the excavation rights, or at least controlling the excavation and funding the excavation. And the CEO of that company is a longtime member of the World Economic Forum. Now, let me just say, this is a conspiracy theory. I'm not saying with any certainty that the World Economic Forum is controlling that site. However, I find it very interesting that the CEO of this site acquired it. He's a longtime member of the World Economic Forum, and then since this came in, so they took control, the partnership was announced in 2016. They started building the infrastructure for tourism in 2017. And since this has happened, back in, I believe it was 2020 or 2019, tourism per year, there was under 20,000 people per year. Now it's at almost 500,000. It's become a tourism cash cow. If there's no World Economic Forum conspiracy, if nothing else, it's just billionaires that are trying to make money that they, hey, we already invested enough. Just don't excavate the site. I don't want to invest millions of dollars more. Just bring us in the money. But here's where it makes me think there's a World Economic Forum connection. Because when you go back over to Gunung Padang now, which again could be this 27,000-year-old pyramidal structure, and something happened where they went from saying they were going to allocate unlimited funding and resources to excavate it to now there's no plan. So I'm like, okay, well, who's making the decisions there? Well, it turns out, and I'm forgetting his name, but it doesn't matter. He is the minister of the Ministry of Culture, Education, Research, and Technology within Indonesia, which controls archaeological excavations at Gunung Padang. And he is a global shaper of the World Economic Forum. And Klaus Schwab, who was the leader of the World Economic Forum, announced, he bragged about this in an interview, by the way, he gloated about how they have infiltrated the cabinets of the, and you're going to eat the bugs, and that guy.
You'll own nothing and be happy.
Yeah, and just so people understand, this is the organization that is pushing for 15-minute cities. They're the organization that wants to
globalization.
Yes, and they want to ban gas-powered stoves. They want to ban gas-powered vehicles, and they want people just live.
Fake meat.
Those people
own nothing, rent everything,
and be happy,
and you'll be happy.
Their exact words. This is a real quote.
You'll own nothing and be happy.
Yeah, which is absurd. And so they tie in, of course, to BlackRock. They're all connected. Powerful members of those organizations are members of the World Economic Forum.
Yes.
So I'm like, this guy, it's like Nakim. I'm going to butcher it, so I'll just stop. But he's the minister of the department that controls the excavations there, and he is a literal global shaper. You can Google him. He's on their website. So I'm like, okay, so at multiple sites around the world, it just so happens that key decision makers at those sites are members of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. I'll again say, this doesn't prove a World Economic conspiracy, because I've got a lot of flack over it, but I'm saying there's a connection, and the response I got from the archaeological community was a bit bizarre, because they attacked me, and I'm like, hey, guys, maybe you should focus on the fact that there's a lack of excavations here. I'm trying to give you guys jobs and work. I just want to see these sites excavated.
Well, I think it's when you take the two dots and connect them of why would you investigate to the point that you know that there's something there, like a tunnel, but then not go further? Right. Kind of like, why would you sonar, deep, penetrate through the stone, the Great Pyramid, to see that there's a chamber, and then not go check? Yeah. That's the point, is that's nonsensical.
Right.
Because we would never have to talk about this. We would never wonder. Mm-hmm. There'd be no reason to wonder if these weren't even in awareness in the first place. Right. But the fact that they came into awareness as a curiosity and that there could be something there means that there was a stop put in place, because otherwise you'd go, oh yeah, that looks interesting. Yes, let's look into that. Right. And then you keep going.
Right. Why would you said it best, why would you establish to go looking for it if you weren't going to go looking? And this is the part that messes up my head, in that it makes no logical sense. It is illogical. We don't even know where we come from as a human species. And the key sites...
We're stardust, Jimmy. We're just stardust.
Well, that is a fact. We are literally, vast majority of all elements in our body come from the stars.
Are we hybrid beings? Did the Anunnaki, come in and adjust our DNA 200,000 years ago?
I honestly think that we are a hybrid species. I honestly identify that would make the most sense when you look at these various scriptures throughout multiple continents around the world that talk about beings messing with the human species and creating us. I think it actually would make a lot of sense, because as humans, we don't assimilate with our environment. We're like this cancer spot, and look, we can't even walk outside barefoot. I get sunburned really quickly, and I am a little pasty, but whatever. Honestly,
the natural environment is not so natural.
No, it would make sense we came from somewhere else. And a lot of people think that's just so silly, but I'm like, actually, if we found out that was the truth, it would make a lot of sense, I think. People
can go down the rabbit hole, the Anunnaki and why we're here and all the different things. But if you just think about the fact that, what are we trying to do as a planet? Let's just think about us for a second and what we're doing. We're trying to get off planet. Mm. You saw Elon at the rally in Butler with his Occupy Mars shirt on. Yep. And, we're trying to get off planet for curiosity, for exploration, for safety. I mean, as we were talking about earlier, asteroids, nuclear, get off planet or go in Earth, right? So getting off planet has its role. And so think about if, in the scope of our universe being, 14.5 billion years old, or whatever the number is, our planet 4.3 or something like that billion years old, that if someone's just a little further along in that 14 or a little further behind, it puts you in a totally different place. Look where we've come in 100 years.
Right.
And so some other species, because there has to be others.
Mathematically, how could there not be?
That what are they going to try and do? Maybe they're trying to get off planet too. Right. And what would you do if you went onto a planet? You'd try and create a civilization. What if something was there already? What if something that was more primitive than us was there? Well, would we try and work with it? We're trying to see how to... Yes, you would. You'd try and figure it all out. This is let's just be us somewhere else in the universe at a different point in time.
Yeah, we would fuck with it. That's what we do. We fuck with things. That is exactly what we would do. Like I could have the best intentions in the universe, and I would probably, if I was in control, why wouldn't I go somewhere and help them out? I would have the, you know what I mean? If I saw some primitive, early intelligent species and I felt I could help them, I'd want to. Maybe it's, some people say it's immoral or whatever, unethical to just let things take its course. I'm like, I don't agree with that. When I see animals suffering, or, or something in the wild, like I help it. Like I help little insects flip over if they're on their back. Like there's something in us to want to like play with things.
Yeah.
And it just would make a lot of sense if we came from somewhere else. And I think that the very nature of us to want to go elsewhere might be the proof.
It's a very, very logical thought, for sure. Do you think that if Trump is elected and his whole posse of Avengers get into office or have a position in the cabinet or part of the transition team, Elon and Tulsi and Bobby and all these magical humans that have like great ideas and deep integrity in what they want to achieve with this country and ultimately, I think, for the planet, do you think that we'll end up getting more latitude with exploration? What do you think will happen, like especially with Elon, like Occupy Mars? I feel like at the rally, Trump was saying like Elon promised that we would get to Mars by the time I was out of office in 4 years if I got in.
Yep.
Like, I mean, how likely do you think that is? And do you think that we'd learn more if this was the new posse in office?
So this is a two-part answer. The short answer is yes. If these people get in there, we're going to witness changes that we've never seen before. But that's the thing.
I think it's the most important election of our lifetime.
It is the history of the future of the United States. This is it, and we're less than a month out now. And the part that messes me up, and this is the part where I was saying it's a two-part answer, is that like the powers that be, and this I hate. Like I don't want to put bad stuff out there, but I'm like the sinister powers that be, I believe, are all in on stopping it. And I'm very, very nervous about that they're going to do something before the election in order to stop it or steal it or manipulate it or whatever it is. All right, so here's my big prediction. And I've been wrong before. I'm just nervous there's going to be some sort of event that will give them a reason to either cancel
There already
election.
has been events, right?
Right.
Think about it. There's one shooting, one attempted shooting on Trump. There's just a huge hurricane. There's another one heading to Florida, all hitting states that are swing states. This is very interesting.
Yeah. I firmly believe that if it is a fair election, Trump will win in a landslide.
Just survey the people.
It's very obvious that there is a...
It's not that there's no Kamala voters. It's just that there's almost no Kamala voters.
I don't know any reasonable person that is supporting her. The media tries to blow it up as if there's some popularity there. It's non-existent, and it's dwarfed by this Make America Great Again movement, and the Make America Great Again movement dwarfs what Obama did in 2008. It was no one knew exactly what was going to happen on election night in 2008. Everyone was waiting to see if it was, I did not vote for Obama, but people were excited about him. And I remember standing in line, seeing a lot of, I could kind of sense, I'm like, okay, people are lining up to vote for him. But I think that the movement that's happening right now and the amount of people that are supporting Trump dwarfs even that movement. And I believe the powers that be fully understand it. And it makes me nervous that they're going to do something to try to steal it, because it's going to upend the deep state. It's going to upend the pharmaceutical companies. Like when you look at the stuff that RFK wants to do, that in itself.
I mean, that's my main, the health stuff was what really got me going on all of it.
Yeah. Oh my God, they're poisoning us in our food. They are poisoning us. And look, it's either to kill us off, make us sick so the pharmaceutical companies can make money. I mean, that could be the basic thing, which it is, just to make money. Because people don't realize the pharmaceutical, like these executives, they're not doctors. These are sharks. These are literal business people. They're a cartel that wears suits. Cartel doesn't have to, they're literal gangsters. And the proof is in the pudding when it talks about the COVID vax and wanting to delay the preliminary results on it for 75 years or whatever it was, to stop the research that they initially had. Like the proof is in the pudding. It's the cover-up. You know, they're not being transparent.
A lot of these pharmaceutical companies will hire out to do research to figure out, to learn more about the drug, and that they're more of a marketing agency.
Yep. And they hire prestigious management consulting firms to do it for them. These aren't like doctors wearing white lab coats or something like that have our best interest. These are literal sharks, like people with finance majors and MBAs. Like these are people that are killers in their field. They only care about the dollar.
Yeah, and I say that because it's an experience of someone speaking about, well, we'll take this data and then you can work with the drug companies, and then because they're really not the ones designing the drugs anyway. They're not really the ones figuring things out. They're the ones that are going to go market it.
Right. And you in your life experience, because you lived a very interesting life, you've been around people that are, I imagine, you've been around the cutthroats. You were people that are very dollar oriented, and I'm sure you've seen in your own life, you know, people that will focus on the dollar over maybe morals or ethics. And I think people understand it now that like that's what's running the world is sharks, killers. You know what I mean? Like I'm not about
here's the thing where we get a little caught in this election situation, or in situations where you have killers and then you have people with ideals, morals, and integrity and highest good in mind, is that lying and cheating works.
Right.
And to be put in a position, right? It can get you somewhere. And so when you're not willing to do that, it means you're not willing to do everything, right? Because it's not in your moral compass. It's not in your constitution. So I think that's where we get a little caught, is that a lot of times we're not willing to do those things.
Right. A lot of people rather do the easy wrong over the hard right. And I've known people like this. Like some people, it's like that show Breaking Bad, like the term Breaking Bad. It can be fun to cheat. Like it can be fun to break the rules. There's a reason why kids enjoy doing the cops and robbers thing. You know, it's like, it's not to say that robbing a bank is a nice thing to do, or, you know, but it's like, it can be exciting, for lack of a better word. And so I remember this one girl I knew who was a lawyer, and she explained this to me, that she has experienced it in herself. This is years ago, but she'd explained it in herself and her colleagues that she knew. Whereas like when you get a lot of lawyers that become attorneys because they want to, you know, like they watch TV and they saw like being in some court case and it sounds like fun. But then it becomes a matter, as you get down the career path, it becomes about ego, and you have two lawyers. One person might be representing someone that's innocent, and the other person might think the person could be innocent, but they want to get the W for their career, for the money, for the record, and that it will become not about the client who might be innocent, but that their own ego, this lawyer is competing against that lawyer, and they don't always like each other because it's a very competitive environment. You know what I mean? And so and I remember her explaining this to me, that a lot of them seem to enjoy the Breaking Bad concept of it, which is that, well, fuck them, I'm going to get the W. They should got a better lawyer. Not my problem. And I'm like, that sounds so awful. Like you could knowingly put someone in prison, but hey, that ties me back to brings us back to Kamala Harris, where it is a known fact, and this has been verified, that she knowingly kept innocent people on death row for political gain. She knew the evidence had been provided that they could be exonerated, and she delayed it for political ambitions. This is verified. And I'm like, oh my God, could you imagine knowingly leaving someone on death row, which is arguably the most stressful environment for a human being on earth? Can you imagine being to be an innocent person in prison must be the complete state of despair the lowest state of despair I could ever imagine. But on death row, and then to leave them there. And she also did it with, like, I believe, chain gangs for to have cheaper. It's not funny. It's funny, but it's not funny. Cheaper taxpayer-funded labor, cheap labor, because like you have chain gangs, people in prison that like will do manual labor for like 30 cents a day or whatever, or an hour, whatever it is. And she did that too.
This person could lead the free world.
Right.
That's becoming not so free.
And she's a shark just like that.
She's not been elected in a position, I think, is one of the biggest fallacies in this all, is that, you know, and it's not really much of a democracy when the people are not voting for the person that's, you know, could run the country.
Yep.
I mean, that's the stage we're at right now. But I actually watched a video somebody put out about the word democracy versus a constitutional republic.
I love
and
this
I was
topic.
like, wow. I was like, that is so beautifully articulated and clear and simple, and that the democracy is someone that's elected in a position that then has all authority.
Right.
And a constitutional republic is that someone is elected into position, yes, but that person is still governed by the Constitution.
Yep.
So there are rules for them.
Yep.
So democracy is like a dictator more so, and a constitutional republic is what we are, is governed, is still an elected person, but governed by rules.
This is something that people need to research, because I hear politicians and people in the media all the time like, this is a democracy. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a constitutional republic, and people need to research what that means. Like, as you were just saying, it's such a beautiful thing, and with it, it is the reason. Listen, it is through our Constitution that the United States emerged to be the most successful and technologically advanced civilization in known human history, and it happened so quickly by just simply giving people freedom to do what they want within reason, and without harming other people.
Exactly.
I'm saying,
To harm other, yeah.
And it created something so beautiful. And a lot of these people I noticed that are super liberal, and I'm not talking about liberal like it used to be, like
Something new.
yeah.
Let's just call it what it is. It's not, this isn't really a Democrat versus Republican situation, because there's a lot of Democrats in the Republican Party right now supporting Donald Trump, right?
Right.
That just has to be, that just is obvious. That is a situation. It's more good versus evil, or freedom versus control, or censorship.
Yep.
That it's good versus evil is the simplest way to say it. But
I love
but
it.
That's not, it's not Republicans anymore. RFK was a Democrat, then an independent. Tulsi was a Democrat. She was very, very high up in the Democratic Party, in the DNC. And so you have these people that are, or even Elon, very progressive, leans towards Democrat, I'm sure. But these people are all now supporting Donald Trump, literally saying, like, please go out and vote. This is the most important election of our lifetime.
Right.
And then on the other side, you just have something new. It's just something new.
Yeah. Yeah. It is.
Sorry, it was my little rant.
No, I love it.
It's not really Democrat versus Republican. It doesn't feel like.
I like how you said it. This is a time we're living in. It's good versus evil, and anyone with a functioning brain and any bit of character that does the smallest amount of research would conclude the same thing. That there's a difference between right and wrong. We have it in us, and this you're a total psychopath, which is such a small percentage of the population, and they're out there. But like, we do know right from wrong inherently. Like, you have a feeling in you. And it is so abundantly clear. Like, how could people be supporting wars and all this other crap and bad health and all these other things that are so easily verifiable to see that's a problem? And I guess my conclusion is that there's a lot of people that don't care because they'll side with evil over good. And a lot of people are just misinformed, and they're not taking upon themselves to inform themselves. They're just watching the media, and they're being brainwashed. And I was one of those people in that, like, I volunteered for the Iraq War years ago because I was watching Fox News and thinking this was justified. And then years later, I concluded that, like, nah, that's not what that was not based on truth. And then I look at, not to get too political, but I look at Dick Cheney supporting Kamala Harris, and I'm like, oh my God. Like, what, do people not realize what's going on here? Like, nobody liked George Bush, or hold on, nobody liked Dick Cheney. And then you get all those people that were wanting to see George Bush tried for treason and crimes against humanity and war crimes. And where are they all now? Like, they're all supporting the military industrial complex regime that is supporting Kamala. Don't get me going. It gets me pissed off too.
The Diddy people support her too.
The Diddy? Oh my God. So I have a feeling that's going to turn out to be a very, very big story. It already is.
Well, let's face it, it's got some sort of, like, it's got the flavor of the Epstein situation, right?
Yeah.
With having so many powerful people that could be exposed. And so
yeah, for
the question ends up
fucking kids, right? Is that what we're trying to say here? Am I allowed to say that? Because that's what this is about.
Yeah. And I think that I think we might have a similar situation to that, right? Because the thing is that why didn't the Epstein stuff come out so much? Why didn't the list, and why weren't people in trouble? And it's like, it's probably going to be the same thing, because right now it's the same people in charge. Mm-hmm. So, like, you know, if you want to learn more about this, if you want the truth, if you want the country that has freedom, How about just like capitalism, a concept that this country is, became great because of capitalism. Like capitalism is something where you can go do your own thing, less government, more you, more tax dollars, less tax dollars so they're in your pocket, more in your pocket. Like these are all things that have to do with being able to become independently successful.
You know what's interesting is that I'm noticing a theme. So when we talk about capitalism, it's almost like this hot topic now where people either support it or like against it. And you get this like emerging, that's happened throughout history, where people are supporting communism. And there's different words for it. They try to like dumb it down with like socialism, but it's all the same thing. It's about allocating authority over your life to other people. And a lot of these people that I notice that are like anti-capitalism and supporting socialism are people that seem to have not traveled to countries where there's dictatorships or actual socialism, and they don't seem to grasp that whenever you give a selective group of people power over your autonomy, it will undoubtedly lead to control and decay and tyranny. And it's just cyclic throughout history. It keeps happening over and over and over again. And it just really crushes me to see that the more people that aren't aware of just how simple it is, that if you give people power over you, it will lead to tyranny, and it's the opposite of capitalism. Capitalism is that freedom of choice to make decisions over your own life, and it's such a beautiful thing. And the United States, being the most successful country on earth, arguably, in all of history, is proof of this. And that's how it all started. We had security, full bellies, and freedom, and it was a nice recipe.
I know how you're voting, I think.
Yeah, I'm all in for Trump, 100%, and I'm proud of it. A lot of people might not like his personality in some ways. I actually love him. I like that he's a fighter, because I have it in me too. There are certain people who are just fighters, and it's just in my blood. It gets me going. And so I don't care about any of the mean tweets he ever made. I'm like, he's Teflon. And it's a decision between good and evil at this point, and I support him 100%. And I also think that, and this is something fun to tie it into a fun conversation on things I look into, is that a few years ago when he was still in office, this was September of 2020, he was meeting in Sacramento for this, involving the Sacramento fires that were happening. And the conversation involved climate change. And he was talking about, one of the gentlemen there was talking about man-made warming and crap. And Trump said, well, it's gonna cool first, right? And he said it like a matter of fact. And the scientist guy was like, well, that's not what the data suggest. But he's like, oh, I don't think he said, I don't think the science knows what the science is talking about. And what's interesting is that when he said so definitively that it's going to cool first, is that this ties into what Elon Musk had said about ice ages being a deep, deep rabbit hole. And through my studies of looking into the interglacial periods that I talked about earlier, when we were talking about how there's these cycles of warm and cool. And the data shows, and I should also mention this, that Media Matters tried to eviscerate me over this point, where I said I believe that the data might indicate that the Earth is cold more often than it's hot. And they responded saying that that contradicts mainstream science and that I'm wrong. No, the only thing I was wrong about was to say that that the data might indicate that the Earth is cold more often than it's hot. There are studies, if you Google this, like the Utah Geological Survey is one of the most prestigious surveys as far as climate change. And their own data says it point blank, which is that the Earth is cold more often than it's hot, that the glacial periods, which is periods of cooling when the glaciers grow, and the interglacial periods, which are the periods of warming, the data proves that it's warm for several thousand years to 10,000 years, and the cooling lasts tens of thousands to even 70 to 90,000 years. And so no, the data does show the Earth is cold more often than it's hot. And when I look into Elon Musk alluding to the ice ages being the deep, deep rabbit hole and wanting to get the hell off the planet, I'm like, he knows this. He knows that the Earth, something is going to happen for it to freeze again. And when it happens, it's game over for civilization. Yes, some humans will survive in different corners of the Earth, absolutely. But if we freeze again, we're not going to be able to feed ourselves. It's going to, and the data shows that it's cyclic. It keeps happening. Why it happens is debatable. They think it has to do with precession of the precessional cycle and the Earth's tilt and moving over time. I think it could involve pole shifts, but that's like a radical conspiracy. But like I think there's truth to it because pole shifts keep happening throughout history, and this is proven science. And if the poles shift, it will cause changes in weather patterns. It will cause changes in the Earth's ocean currents, which causes the ocean currents are the number 2 factor of weather systems on Earth. The number 1 is the sun. And both things happen. If the Earth's poles shift, the sun will face different directions with the Earth. And if the Earth's ocean currents change, it's like, for example, why England is moderate. It doesn't get a lot of snow. It's because the Gulf Stream from the Caribbean goes all the way up to England, and it keeps it from being frozen. So it's all there.
Wow.
I'm like, these people, people think Trump just talks out of his butt. I'm like, no, he doesn't. Like, he's telling you what other experts had told. Just like when he talked about the light being something that could kill off COVID. Remember the UV he was talking about? People like laughed at him. No, that actually is true. The sun kills, UV light kills bacteria very quickly. And so when he mentioned definitively that it's going to cool first, right? I'm like, why would he say that? It was something so specific. God, I'd love just 30 seconds of his time, and Elon's as well, to ask, like, hey, so real quick, why did you say it was going to cool? Like, what is it? Like, what direction are you going here with that? Like,
Jimmy, that's where I was supposed to be going today. I was supposed to be going to Mar-a-Lago.
Really?
And yeah, but the hurricane is coming through the Gulf. And so there was a Maha event. There was a round table tomorrow that I was going to do. And then there was a dinner. There was like a reception and a dinner.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let me give rumble.com a shout out.
Yeah.
Because of them, doing podcasts with them, I was able to go to Mar-a-Lago last November, and what a cool event that was.
Really?
It was neat to be there.
I heard just the events there are so great.
Yeah, Trump knows how to put stuff on. They know how to wine and dine people, and it's the best everything. And I imagine you'll have an opportunity to go back. Were you going to meet with Trump?
Yeah, he was going to be at the reception and dinner. And
did you meet him before? I saw a picture.
I haven't met him. No, I just sort of smiled.
You weren't tempted to go be like, hey.
He was at the F1 race in Miami.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you met Elon yet?
No.
I imagine you would like to meet both of them.
Those are two. I'd love to meet him, of course, yeah.
When you do, if you could just if you remember, be like, hey, so the Ice Age thing.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Yeah. Are we going to freeze before we boil?
Yeah.
Just let me know.
I'd be more than I'd pay them for their time. Like, I have some ideas, but just tell me which direction to go.
I have a feeling if Trump is elected again and that whole group gets in, I think things are going to be a lot different. And I hope that trickles down into all the things that we were talking about today, which are, sites that might expose truths. And I think that they're a group that's really in favor of it's like the saying obviously is make America great again, but I think it could be greater than it's ever been, at least in our modern awareness. And we could be aware of these technologies. Maybe they come in, maybe free energy becomes a real thing, things like that. Why not?
Right.
Look, there's plenty of ways to make money in the world, right? It doesn't have to be like that.
To finish up one thing, people, when cars became a thing, I remember back in New York City, when cars were emerging, back before that, people were riding horses on the regular, and horses were big business. And at that time, they believed that it was going to destroy the horse industry, and it was going to cause mass poverty if too many people bought cars. And how did that turn out? It turned out to be wonderful. So it's like everything creates new things. There will always be a way to make money.
Exactly.
And, you said it perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Jimmy.
My pleasure.
Oh, it was so fun to deep dive.
Yeah, let's do it again sometime.
For sure. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.